Hello everybody, Mr. Norman here for another Animal Farm lesson. Hope you're all doing very well. Today we're going to be looking at another assessment question. This time we're going to be focusing on a theme rather than a character. So our question this week is, I will work harder, explore the significance of loyalty in the novella. So the first thing we need to do is we need to think about which characters and what quotes link to loyalty. The first one we're going to have a look at is Boxer. He's probably the most interesting and most detailed character we can look at in terms of this theme. So Boxer represents the proletariat workers of the Soviet Union. He's very strong, very hardworking. He's super loyal, but he doesn't have a lot of brain to match his brawn. He's completely loyal to Napoleon and Napoleon's vision of animalism. He feels like he owes Napoleon for ridding the farm of the threat of Mr. Jones. This can be seen in the third quote down where it says, "The very day that those great muscles of yours lose their power, Jones will send you to the knacker, who will cut your throat and boil you down for foxhounds." So Boxer is very scared under the rule of Mr. Jones that there's the possibility of going to the knacker. So he's very grateful to Napoleon for organising the revolution and for taking power away from Mr. Jones. We could say that Boxer's loyalty is based on blind patriotism. Because of his lack of education, he's very easily manipulated by Napoleon and Squealer's propaganda. When Napoleon has the animals killed by the dogs, Boxer thinks that the animals must have deserved it and they must have done something terribly wrong. And that's shown in that quote in the middle. "I would not have believed such things could happen. It must be some fault of ourselves." And he sees his solution as to work harder. Boxer can be seen, he's described as an enormous beast, strong as two horses, not of first-rate intelligence, but is universally respected for his steadiness and tremendous powers of work. So Boxer is very loyal to Napoleon, but also to the farm and the other animals. He works so hard so the farm can succeed and thrive and so it can build to something better. However, this loyalty is misplaced because he does not receive the same respect, love and loyalty from the others, especially from the pigs. When Boxer works himself almost to death, he's sent to the knacker and he's turned into glue. So there's no love, no respect, no loyalty shown to him there. His strength had completely left him. What can we say about Orwell's message in terms of Boxer and loyalty? Perhaps Orwell is suggesting that the uneducated Russian proletariat is to blame for helping Stalin gain and maintain power. Perhaps he wants to warn the common man that following leaders blindly can lead to dire consequences. So because Boxer has all this strength and all this power, he could have made a difference. He could have had a second uprising against Napoleon. That's what kind of Orwell was perhaps touching upon. That this strength that the workers and the people have, if they use it and if they bond together, they can topple anything. However, Orwell's saying that the proletariat of Stalin's Russia was too uneducated to make a difference. He's saying that these uneducated people can be easily manipulated, and he implores the reader to educate themselves as much as possible in important matters such as politics and history, etc. So a real part of the message is we all need to educate ourselves because there are people in power that are going to manipulate us. We need to know the facts and know fact from fiction. Also, a big part of this is Orwell's message about how Stalin manipulated and abused millions of farm workers to help build and maintain his socialist economy. So many of these workers were loyal to him, and Stalin kind of abused this loyalty. As part of his collectivization 5-year plan, he changed the landscape of agriculture, and in the Ukraine, this led to a massive famine where millions of people died. So Orwell's shining a light on this issue. And he's highlighting the horrors of communism to warn the West about the goings-on behind the Iron Curtain and hopefully dissuading people from glamorizing the Soviets after their heroic efforts in World War II. So for those that aren't aware of the history of World War II, the Soviet Union, the communists, helped the West win the war, helped the Allies beat the Axis, the Germans and the Japanese. Without the Russians, it probably would have been a very different story. So they were seen as heroes. They contributed to the war effort and helped defeat Hitler, the Nazis and Germany. So people in the West would perhaps see the Soviet Union as not an altogether bad thing at this point in time. But Orwell wants to highlight what's actually going on before the war and during the war, what's actually going on in Russia. There's definitely a fable in here about blind loyalty and the dire consequences it can lead to. Perhaps he believes that loyalty should be earned and under constant review, and he's warning the reader to remain vigilant with their leaders and their politicians. Okay, the second character we're going to look at is Squealer. Squealer is a tool used to invoke loyalty in the farm animals. He uses language to manipulate the animals and twist reality to calm any dissent that may be brewing. He is completely loyal to Napoleon. We may ask why. Is it fear, respect, or his own selfish endeavours? Some quotes that link to Squealer are, while he's described as a brilliant talker, he can argue difficult points, he's very persuasive, and he could turn black into white. So he uses this manipulation of language to encourage and almost manipulate and force the animals to be loyal to Napoleon and his vision. And Squealer also lies about Boxer's death. This links in with loyalty quite heavily. He says, watching Boxer die was the most affecting sight I have ever seen. And this is obviously a lie because Squealer doesn't see Boxer die. Squealer lies that Boxer was taken to the vet because he was very ill, and he's saying it was a very sad sight. He's using emotive language to manipulate the loyalty of the other animals. We can also look at Napoleon. He's very loyal to himself. He's only loyal to the other animals when it suits him. And when they are no longer useful, they got him rid of. You could say this is ruthlessly pragmatic. So he's quite logical in his approach to loyalty. He appears to be loyal to the cause of animalism earlier on, but he constantly breaks the commandments. So one word we could say about Napoleon is he's very Machiavellian. We've looked at that term in Macbeth and perhaps a little bit in this as well. That means he's kind of plotting and planning his ascent to power behind the scenes. And then when it comes, when he grabs power, he's still plotting and manipulating things to maintain in that position of power. He seems completely loyal to Squealer because he is not competent in himself to speak in public, to manipulate in the same way that Squealer does. So they kind of need each other for their totalitarian rule to be successful. And some quotes to describe Napoleon: he's large, fierce, boar, not much of a talker. That's why he's got the loyalty to Squealer, but he's got a reputation for getting his own way. He says that the pigs are brain workers. He has loyalty to the other pigs. He sees them as a class above the average workers. And then it goes on later on to say, when Napoleon has power, he rarely appears in public, spends a lot of time in the farmhouse. So he's loyal to himself, but this isolation leads to paranoia because he doesn't trust the other animals on the farm. And this represents what was going on in real life with Stalin. He became very paranoid about others taking control, taking power away from him, killing him, assassinating him, poisoning him. So this symbolizes all of that. And the last quote is a hypocritical quote by Napoleon saying, "True happiness lay in working hard and living frugally." But we know that Napoleon doesn't work hard, he doesn't live frugally, he gets drunk and he gambles, and he probably wastes a lot of the animals' money. So Napoleon's loyalty is bad for the farm. And the last characters we can kind of lump in with those two are the 9 dogs. They show complete loyalty to Napoleon. They symbolise corrupted innocence. They are raised in isolation. And some quotes to show that: whenever Napoleon whistles, there's a terrible sound, and the enormous dogs wearing brass-studded collars come bounding into the barn. And these dogs symbolise Stalin's NKVD police force. So they look very fierce. They've got these brass-studded collars. They're cold-hearted. They're vicious. And they also wagged their tails in the same way that the dogs had done before for Mr. Jones. So things haven't changed on the farm. Mr. Jones had vicious dogs that bullied the other animals, and so does Napoleon. And the violent acts they carry out can be described as tearing out the throats of the other animals. So how can we link all of this to Orwell's message? Well, Orwell's saying that those in power in Stalin's communist Russia have very little loyalty to the people, so why should the people have loyalty to them? He is highlighting the hypocrisy of those in charge and questioning the loyalty of those beneath them. He is suggesting that people who seek power can't be trusted, as they are easily corruptible and use their powers of manipulation and violence to create a situation that was just as bad, if not worse, than it was before. So remember, the Tsars, the Russian Tsars, were quite corrupt. They were greedy. They used violence against their own people. That symbolises Mr. Jones. And the Russian people wanted to rid themselves of the Tsars, so they had the revolution. And they thought things were going to be better. However, they replaced it with communism, and Stalin ended up in charge, and things ended up just as bad, if not worse. So remember, that allegory is going on the whole time. Orwell wanted to highlight how Stalin used violence to obtain and maintain his power through his secret police and through his army, symbolised by the dogs. This is part of Orwell's purpose, to highlight the horrific things Stalin did in real life, and to de-glamorise the Soviet Union and de-glamorise communism. The 9 dogs could also symbolise corrupted youth. The dogs were raised in isolation. This could be an allegory for the youngsters in a communist state who would be raised in isolation from the wider world. For example, they wouldn't have access to Western TV, film, news. This would all be unavailable in communist Russia, and it would, if it did come over, it would be heavily censored, as you might perhaps see in a country like China today. Therefore, the youth of Russia would be corrupted from the constant barrage of Soviet propaganda, filling their minds with hate and false hope and loyalty. So you could comment that the dogs, raised in isolation, become a tool for the state. They don't have their own personality. They don't make their own decisions. Perhaps Orwell's saying, if communist states are in power and they have a heavy use of censorship and propaganda, then the people will become corrupted. They won't reach their potential. The next character we're going to look at is Snowball. He's friendly, lively, and approachable. Animals don't see him as strong or wise. That's shown in the quote. He's vivacious, quicker in speech, and more inventive than Napoleon, but he was not considered to have the same depth of character. So he's very lively, very energetic, but the other animals don't take him as seriously. He doesn't have the gravitas of Napoleon. In terms of loyalty, Snowball is completely loyal to the pure, original vision of animalism laid out by Old Major, and he follows the commandments more closely than some of the other pigs. He has brilliant speeches, and he tries to create rebellions on other farms. So where he says he wants more and more pigeons to stir up rebellion, he's very loyal to the cause, and he wants that cause and that belief system to spread. He also wants what's best for the animals on the farm. He's very loyal to those other animals. He wants them to have a better life. And his vision for this is the windmill. He talks about fantastic machines which would do the work for the animals while they grazed at ease in the fields, or improve their minds with reading and conversation. So he not only wants the animals to have a physically easier life, a more relaxed life, he wants them to gain an education. And this is obviously a big threat to Napoleon, who doesn't want this, because an educated public is a dangerous public for a totalitarian leader. What's Orwell's message in terms of Snowball? Well, Snowball shows how all the good, moral people in the revolution were gradually forced out by the ruthless hand of Stalin. He shows the reader how Stalin put an end to all democratic processes and how the voice of the people has also been greatly subdued. He's trying to influence Western readers against the temptation of communism. He has seen the hardships it causes firsthand in the Spanish Civil War, and he wants to use his talent as a writer to stop the spread by enlightening his reader as much as possible. He wants to show that the dream of communism is a poisonous lie. So, during World War II, Russia, the Soviet Union, they were heroes. They helped to defeat Hitler. So in the West, they were perhaps celebrated as part of a team. And communism as a kind of political belief system was gaining more and more popularity in the 30s and 40s. People were seeing it as an alternative way. There was a lot of poverty going on in a lot of countries. The gap between the poorest and the richest was very large. So communism was seen as perhaps another way, but all while saying no. Forget the temptation of communism. It will always lead to something bad, to something terrible, to violence and corruption. The last character we're going to look at is Benjamin. He's a little bit of a side character, and we could say he represents Orwell, or the narrator. He's very intellectual, very wise, but he sits back and he observes. He doesn't take part. So he shows no real loyalty. His only loyalty is to make these kind of sarcastic comments. He appears to have seen it all before, and this foreshadows the cyclic nature of the novella. He's the oldest animal on the farm and the worst tempered. He makes cynical remarks. And a quote that links to that cyclic nature is when he says, "Why again? Because donkeys live a long time." So it kind of suggests that he's seen it all. And whoever's in charge, whatever new ideas or new technology there are, he's saying, doesn't really make a difference. I'm going to sit on the sidelines, watch it all play out, and things will always be pretty much the same. So this could be seen as quite nihilistic or apathetic, suggesting he knows better, but he could also be seen as a bit of a coward for sitting out, for not helping the other animals to see what's going on. However, he does regret this kind of approach later on when Boxer dies. He feels guilty. And a quote to show that is, he feels morose and taciturn because of that death. So that means he's sadder and he's even more quiet, subdued and isolated after Boxer's death. And the quote in the middle, the good little bit there, is the unalterable law of life. He's just saying everything happens, people come and go, but things will always be the same. What's Orwell saying about this message? Benjamin is a symbol for all of those that could have stopped Stalin and communism or steered it in another direction. He is a symbol for what happens when you are loyal to no one and stand on the sidelines letting horrors play out. So all I was saying, there were people that could have changed the path of communism. And he's warning other people in different countries where maybe communism is gaining in popularity, look, you need to take a stand. You need to make sure this doesn't happen or this goes the right way. We need moral people. We need good educated people to stand up for what is right. And Benjamin also contributes to the fable. It's a warning that if you're apathetic to the action of your rulers, then bad things can happen. He's saying people should be educated and informed and hold their leaders to account so they never take totalitarian power. Okay, so a little bit of information on how to structure your essay. Remember, you're answering a question, but it's in essay form. So we might want to start with an introduction to summarise the importance of the theme in the novella. And then we go on to look at 2 or 3 characters in a lot of detail. And we end up with a little bit of a summary, perhaps comment on the success of Orwell and his message at the time, and is it still relevant today? Zooming in a little bit more, how do we structure each one of those individual paragraphs? Well, we need our points. We need to embed our evidence now. We're going to look in a second at a slide where I've embedded the evidence, embedded the quotes to support what I'm saying throughout. We need to analyse that quote a little bit, brush upon some of the language. What is it saying? How does it link to that key theme? And then we're going to explore it in a little more detail. Does it link to any other themes? Can we connect to other characters? Is there anything else it's saying to us that we need to explore? And then we want to link to the context. And really important that some of us missed out on, we need to link to Orwell's message and purpose. So what he's saying and why he's saying it. And here's an example response that I've typed up. So I've colour-coded the different sections in different colours. The black is the point I'm making. The red are the embedded quotes. Look how they're embedded throughout. We're no longer using a whole section to say a quote to show this is. Okay? If you do that, you're going to be stuck around the grades for the quotation section, that's more like a grade 4 or 5 type skill. We need to be moving to 6, 7, 8s. So that is embedding these quotes. And look how I'm doing it throughout. Even when I'm changing what part of the paragraph I'm in, I'm still trying to drop in little quotes if I can, if possible. So the brown is analysing the quote in a little bit of detail. The blue is then exploring it, linking it to other themes, ideas, other characters. And then the green, that really important bit that we really need to secure those top level grades, that's linking to the purpose. I'm not going to read out this whole slide. I'm going to let you do that. But just bear in mind, this could be larger. So if you're aiming for those top marks, I'd have more content in here. You might want to explore, you might want to make 2 different points about Boxer because he's such a big character in terms of this particular theme. So you might want to start a new point at the end of the blue section, another point, another evidence, another explain and explore, or analyse and explore, and then have your green section right at the end of that. If you wish, I have created this little plan for your assessment. If you're a planner, you don't have to do this, but I know some of you like to plan things out. That's perfectly fine. You've got the characters, and then what's the point, evidence, analysis, explanation, and writer's purpose. And then here's the question again. I will work harder, explore the significance of loyalty in the novella. You got 50 minutes, 40 marks available, 32 marks for the content, 8 marks for the spag. Have a look at the grade boundaries, highlight some of those keywords. One to really look at, if we have a look at where it says 27 to 32 and we go across, an assured personal response. So within our essay, we're coming up with some of our own interpretations. The students that are getting the highest grades, they're coming up with their own little take on what quotes show or what Orwell's trying to get across. They're adding some of their own thoughts and ideas in there. That's super important to get those real top grades. Also remember, there's 8 marks for spag. Use a variety of punctuation, especially semicolons and colons. Show that you can use them. Use a variety of sentence types. Use elaborate, advanced vocabulary. Use some of those key fancy words we've touched upon. Really show off, okay? Your job is to show off for the examiner. Don't do the bare minimum. Push yourself. It's really good practice. You'll be secure, you'll be confident, and you'll feel good about the exam. Okay, so I hope that's all been really helpful for you folks. If we can complete that in the next couple of weeks and email it over to me, that would be great. I'll send it back to you with feedback, marks, grades. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me. I hope you're all well and hopefully see you soon. All the best. See you later.